Hi everybody, welcome and thank you for joining me again. A quick shout out to Cornelia and Irene. I don't usually do this, but these two saved my bacon recently and they'll know what I'm talking about. Anyway guys, I'm facing yet another dilemma, or rather a mystery. Well, two mysteries actually. The first one, why oh why would anyone report on Harry and Meghan's lies and then go right ahead and lie about them? How does that work? And number two, so many people are talking about the bullshittery around Harry and Meghan, and then they still go watch the channels which are full out dishing up 70 to 80% fantasy. Now look, I've accepted that I would likely die with 43,000 subscribers while the fantasists will continue to grow. On the one hand, I don't mind because I have very loyal subscribers, but on the other hand, I am a victim of inflation just like anyone else, so it does become rather tight if there isn't at least a little growth. Anyway, it appears that in general the public prefer salacious nonsense to fact. Anyway, let's move on to our video of the day. However, I am going to address Harry's legal cost with regards to his ANL case again, but this time not in my own words, but in the words of an expert. Unfortunately, one sends off questions or you ask for information, and it does take time often to get back to you. However, I would still like to go ahead and read this reply to you, because the next time anyone cries, "Oh, Harry is bankrupt because he has 50 million in legal fees to pay back," you can at least proudly stand up and say, "That is a lie. Why are you fibbing?" Okay? So here goes the full reply on my inquiry and questions. In his legal action against Associated Newspapers Limited, ANL, Prince Harry was instructed by the law firm Hamlin's LLP and specifically led by partner Callum Galbraith. He was also represented in court by barrister David Sherborne, along with Julian Santos, Ben Hamer, and Luke Brown of 5RB, who acted as lead counsel for the joint claim group. Prince Harry was one of 7 co-claimants in the joint lawsuit. There was Sadie Frost, also represented by Hamlin's LLP, Doreen Lawrence, represented by Gunnar Cook LLP, Elton John, David Furnish, and Elizabeth Hurley, all represented by Gunnar Cook LLP, and Simon Hughes, represented and advised by Thompson, Heath and Associates. Now, while the claimants used different instructing firms for their individual case preparations, they were all represented in court by the same lead counsel team headed by David Sherborne. ANL's actual claim for its legal bill is 34.5 million, and ANL is seeking an immediate interim payment of 10 million. Now that 10 million is like a deposit. It will come off the total eventually. When media outlets or commentators claim Prince Harry personally faces a £50 million bill, they are either conflating total case costs, ignoring how costs are actually divided among co-claimants, or sensationalizing the math. Here are the actual figures on record. Now, I'm also taking it out of the email and I'm posting it on the screen for you as well, okay? ANL's claimed legal bill, £34.5 million. Total legal expenditure claimed by ANL for the 11-week trial. Okay, now that equates to about $47 million, okay, at least at today's rate. Claimants, ATE insurance, 16.2 million. Now, it is broken down as follows. 6 claimants held after the event, ATE insurance policies capped at £2.7 million each. Net uninsured balance on the ANL side, obviously, will then be £18.3 million, which is indeed the gap between ANL's claim and the insurance payout of $16.2 million. Now, the jump from the actual court figures, $34.5 million, to the media's headline of $50 million comes down to possibly 3 factors. Number 1, combining both sides' legal bills. The $50 million could represent the total amount spent by all parties combined, namely ANL of $34.5 million and the claimant's total own legal fees of $15 to $18 million. Now that would include legal counsel, solicitors, court fees, expert witnesses, blah, blah, blah. Now, when commentators say or talk about a $50 million legal bill, they are indeed referring to the overall economic cost, or they're likely referring to the overall economic cost of the lawsuit across both teams, not what one person owes. Now, I just want to interject with my own comment here. Not what Harry owes, what one person owes. So the YouTubers who title their videos, "Harry faces 50 million legal bill," are indeed either lying or they're roping you in with clickbait. Okay, moving on, let's continue reading. In the United Kingdom civil courts, the losing side rarely pays 100% of the winner's claimed costs. Under standard assessment, courts typically award the winner 60 to 70% of their submitted bill. Now, folks, this is important. ANL's lawyers are indeed smart cookies. They have requested indemnity costs, which will force the claimants to cover 80 to 90% of the $34.5 million without the court scrutinizing whether every expense is necessary or not. But even in the worst case scenario where ANL does get full indemnity costs, ANL's legal fees liability remains $34.5 million and not $50 million. The third reason why commentators may use $50 million for their headlines is because they are conflating Harry with the entire claim group. There are 7 co-claimants in this joint action. Every and any uninsured shortfall remaining after the $16.2 million insurance payout is an exposure shared across the claimant group. Reporting the entire combined liability as if Harry has to pay the whole check makes, obviously, for a far more dramatic headline, but it distorts legal reality. Okay, me interjecting again. Yep, folks, my learned friends here are being very, very diplomatic, and obviously they are being very kind here, not looking for trouble, not wanting to chase away potential clients, I guess. But I'll say it how it is. In my opinion, of course, I see it as lies and clickbait from people who know that drama sells. Okay, moving on. My second request was for them to break down and calculate Harry's estimated portion of the costs. Firstly, ANL requested a 10 million interim payment. In High Court joint court actions like this one, we get two scenarios: global or individual claims. High courts typically order interim payments as a global sum against the claimant group as a whole. Thus, the per person split, divided equally among the 7 co-claimants, would come to 1.43 million per person. But remember from my previous video, the claimants offered basically 8 million, 7.9 million plus change as interim payment. Thus, if the court accepts their offer, Harry's share will only come to 1.14 million. Now, this is what my learned legal friends with insights into the British judiciary reckon Harry's full liability will be. Number one, courts usually apply the standard assessment on fees, or then 60 to 70% of the claimed fees, and an average of that would thus be a 65% recovery for ANL, which would equal roughly 22.4 million. Then you have to deduct the ATE insurance of 16.2. The net shortfall would in this case be only 6.2 million, of which Harry's 1/7 would come to £885,000, or then 1.19 million. Again, in the worst possible case scenario, the most unlikely scenario, but obviously not impossible, if the judge awards ANL 100% of their 34.5 million, the shortfall will be 18.3 million. Now that divided equally 7 ways will mean that Harry's share will be about £2.61 million, or $3.5 million. Okay, so to further debunk that, Harry is ruined by a 50 million claim, let's look at Harry's own legal fees. Okay, now here is a little bit of guesswork involved because my experts obviously did not work on the case, but I was surprised to learn that there's not a lot of guesswork to be done, because Judge Nichols, now I did not know this, the clever man, capped the claimant's budget at 4.1 million, I would guess, each. So they could not individually be billed for more than that. Okay, so yes, it is a rather wide margin, but will indeed further prove to you that no matter what, Harry does not come even close to a personal liability of 50 million. So, here's the breakdown according to the expert. Harry's share of ANL costs after the insurance shortfall is calculated would come to somewhere between 0.9 million and 2.6 million. His own legal team, Hamlins and Counsel, will come to 2 million to 3.5 million. Thus, a total expenditure of between 2.9 million and 6.1 million pounds. Now, like I said, that is a rather broad margin, but my experts did not work on the case, okay? But that is an estimate, 2.9 to 6.1 million, which equates to about $8.2 million at today's rate. Now, while no one is going to argue that several million pounds is still a massive financial blow, it is nowhere near 50 million pounds. Now, just to appease everybody and make 100% sure I covered all angles before criticizing anyone, I did ask whether Judge Nichols could decide to divide the costs according to the number of claims each accuser brought, and here is the expert's answer. Yes, the judge has full legal discretion to apportion costs based on the volume or complexity of the claims brought by each individual, rather than defaulting to an equal seven-way split. Under Rule 44 of the UK Civil Procedure Rules, the CPR, High Court judges have wide flexibility when deciding how legal costs are allocated. Now, remember what I read to you before. ANL's lawyers asked the court for a global interim payment order. And if the judge grants that order, it is likely he will grant a global order over the full amount of the claim and not a jointly and severally order. Thus, if Judge Nichols grants a global order, ANL can and definitely will demand the money from the group as a whole, and how the claimants split that bill among themselves would depend on their private co-claimant agreement, and it will have nothing to do with ANL. If the claimant's contract specifies that liability is calculated per article or per claim, then so be it. ANL will expect their money from the group regardless. But yes, if the group has an agreement like that, Harry would automatically absorb 50% of the cost because he brought 14 of the 27 claims. Thus, we can look at about £17.25 million and, of course, his own legal cost. Still, the absolute worst and the most unlikely scenario, Harry will be down for about 20 million, somewhere between 16 and 20 in this case, but still nowhere, absolutely nowhere near 50 million. The judge could, however, also issue an order dividing liability by the percentage of trial work generated, thus the same split where Harry will be liable for about 50%, but that would almost be unprecedented in a High Court case. Not impossible, not at all, just not usual. And he will likely grant, I'm talking about the judge here, will likely grant a global order and leave the claimants to sort out themselves if there isn't obviously already an agreement in place. My legal experts have now given you the full breakdown, including the best and the worst case scenarios, but it is their honest opinion that Harry will not be down for more than £3 to £6.1 million in total, ANL and own costs, as the judge may have dismissed the entire case and ruled in ANL's favour, but the judge also said that it is his belief that the case was brought in good faith. So my experts believe that Judge Nichols will stick to the standard 65% of the cost. So we'll see next week, but I certainly do not believe that this particular ruling will ultimately be the sole reason for Harry and Meghan's bankruptcy. I think Meghan has lost far more with her as never, which we know now that Harry has indeed bankrolled. Well, I think people are telling me that she had lost nearly 25 million in that venture. So compare that to about 6 million for this case, can't be compared. So no, I do not think that this case will be the thing which will bankrupt Harry. I think it would much rather be his wife that bankrupts him than anything or anybody else, in my humble opinion, based on the opinion of people who are indeed themselves part of the British judiciary. Okay, guys and girls, I will be back with very, very interesting news as soon as I possibly can be. So until then, please take good care of yourselves, stay vigilant, and stay safe. Bye.